Whoa, what is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. So amped up for this week. My first week since I've been on YouTube that the New York Giants are going to be playing a playoff game. And because of how excited I am, we're going to have a lot of live content. We're going to have a lot of videos. Plan on going live at least probably 4 times leading up into the playoffs because I know we're amped up. Going to have a bunch of guests on the channel. Really looking forward to that. Want to have some video call-ins, so on and so forth. Got a lot to talk about today. I'll talk about my feelings going into the playoffs. I also want to touch on the New York Giants schedule, just give my overall opinion on it. Not going to do a record prediction. And at the end of the day, record predictions are meaningless regardless of who they come from. It's a guessing game, right? The NFL season is so unpredictable pertaining to injuries when you get teams on your schedule. But it's just fun to go over the schedule, especially when it initially comes out. You find out where the games are going to be, being played. We don't know the order yet. I'll dive into, where I would prefer some of these games to be ordered when the schedule comes out, but excited to go over that with you guys as well. And I wanted to touch on a audio clip that came out from Boomer Esiason today. Hopefully I don't screw that up. I'll review the video before I make it public. I've learned my lesson with that in the past, but wanted to touch on what Boomer Esiason had to say on WFAN today regarding the contract situation with Daniel Jones. I think most Giant fans, if they're level-headed at this point, have realized more than likely Daniel Jones is coming back. It's just a matter of what that contract is going to look like. And I, as a Giants fan, and maybe I'm a bit of a nerd because I like to see these contracts when they come out, am excited to see how Joe Schoen structures this to give the New York Giants as much cap flexibility as they possibly can going into the future if and when I think they're going to sign Daniel Jones. But I wanted to touch on what Boomer Esiason had to say in terms of the length of the contract, so on and so forth, and I'll give my full opinion on that. And of course, I want to touch on the playoffs. And I'm really excited, right? We got our game on Sunday. The schedule came out 4:30 p.m. We'll be getting a rematch against the Minnesota Vikings. And we'll start with that before we jump into the bulk of this video, which isn't going to really be touching so much on the playoffs. But why not us? That's my outlook going into the playoffs. And that's the beauty of the NFL playoffs. I'm not telling you that we should be favored. We shouldn't be. We have a roster filled with guys who have never played in the playoffs before. Daniel Jones has never played in a playoff game. Saquon Barkley's never played in a playoff game. Leonard Williams has never played in a playoff game. Basically, our entire roster has never played in a playoff game. Brian Daboll has never coached in a playoff game as a head coach. Of course, he did with the Buffalo Bills. But I look back to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not saying we have Joe Burrow. We don't. I'm not saying we have T. Higgins. I'm not saying we have Jamar Chase. But that was a team that didn't have much experience. So to me, in the playoffs, experience means very little. It's about being hot, getting into the playoffs at the right time, playing your best football, and giving yourselves an opportunity. Are we the most talented team? Absolutely not. There's a reason we shocked the world this year. There's a reason that nobody thought the New York Giants should be in the playoffs to begin with, because we don't have the best of talent. But I'll tell you what we do have. We have a coach that gets the most out of the talent that he is provided with, and we have players that buy into that coach. So I think the New York Giants have an opportunity to cause some damage come playoff time. Will they? That remains to be seen. Regardless, I think this is a great opportunity for this young team to learn and grow from this experience, not just in the playoffs, but will let up into us getting into the playoffs. But there's no doubt in my mind right now, the New York Giants are playing their best football of the season. The question is, will their best be enough? But leading up into the playoffs, the New York Giants, and yes, I understand if you look at the record, we started out 6-1. You could say to yourself, Chris, how could you be saying that? We finished the year at, I think it was 9-7-1, whatever it was. How could you be saying that? Well, I'll tell you what. Over our last 4 contests, we went into Washington on the road when they had an extra week to prepare for that game, and we beat them 20-12. Yes, there were things at the end of the game that you could have said, well, the referees gave us the benefit of the whistle here and there. I don't want to hear it. We got bad luck with the whistle all year. We found a way to win on the road in which they had all the advantages going into that game. Then we go to Minnesota, the team we're playing on short rest, and we lose the turnover battle by 2. We throw the ball 42 times, which I thought going into that game was against our best interest, being that Minnesota has all that firepower, and we outplayed the Minnesota Vikings. Then we beat the Colts 38-10. And I understand it's the Indianapolis Colts, but if I would have asked you at any point in this season before the year started, 8 weeks into the season, that we were going to beat a team by 28 points at any point on our schedule this year, you would have called me crazy. We didn't look like we had the offensive firepower regardless of who we were going up against, and we did that. And then this past week, with our third-string quarterback and all backups, in a game in which the Philadelphia Eagles were absolutely trying to win. Was Jalen Hurts himself? No, he's banged up. He's dinged up. They still had their first team defense. They still had their first team offensive line. They still had their premier wide receivers, and they were trying to win that game. Otherwise, why would you bring in a battered up Jalen Hurts to even play? Why not rest up for the playoffs? They were absolutely trying to win that game. They were trying to put that game to rest earlier on so they could rest their starters. The New York Giants fought them all the way to the end. And yeah, you could say, well, that didn't really benefit because the starters didn't play. To me, it's about the coaching. Brian Daboll was able to get his backups and third stringers to be able to compete with the number one seed in the NFC. So there's no doubt in my mind right now going into the playoffs, the New York Giants are playing their best football of the season. So why not us? You look around the playoffs right now, outside of Tom Brady, who's the GOAT, who we don't got to worry about playing probably until the NFC title game if the Bucs get there, and the Bucs don't look very good anyway. But you look around the quarterbacks in the playoffs right now, they have 2 combined playoff wins outside of Tom Brady. Kirk Cousins is 1-3. Dak Prescott's 1-3. The rest of them have never played in the playoffs. That being Geno Smith, that being Daniel Jones, that being Purdy. And I know I'm forgetting somebody, but regardless, none of them have any playoff wins outside of Dak Prescott and outside of Kirk Cousins that aren't named Tom Brady. And both of them are 1-3, and both of them are known not to be the clutchest of quarterbacks. And I know a lot of people look at the quarterbacks when it comes to projecting whether or not you're going to win football games. There's a lot more that goes into it than that, right? I watched the New York Jets with Mark Sanchez beat Tom Brady in Foxborough. Giants need to establish their identity. They can't turn the football over, and they have a great chance to beat the Minnesota Vikings. And at that point, if they're able to do that, you start to build some momentum. Maybe you catch the Philadelphia Eagles off a bye coming out sluggish, a team in which you built some confidence, against this past week. Who knows? It's why you take it 1 week at a time. But why not us? We got to take it to the dance, and I'm excited to see what the New York Giants can do with that ticket. I'm pumped up. I believe in our coach, and I think this team's going to give it everything they got. And as a fan this year, that's all that I could ask for. We've been given a great opportunity. Nobody expected this at the beginning of the year, and it's just been a great ride. It's been a great ride. I thought this team would win 6 or 7 games, and we've dealt with so many injuries. We've been able to overcome that. It's just been a great year. And a great group of guys, and I can't wait to see what Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence, and everybody else does with the opportunity that they've been provided with. But, of course, we're going to talk a lot more about this Minnesota matchup throughout the week. But it's certainly a team that I think as Giants fans we should feel going into the game. We have a legitimate chance to beat this team. We have a very good chance to beat this team. Minnesota's a 3-point favorite, as they were the first time around. We lost on a 61-yard field goal. And like I said, a game in which we lost the turnover battle by 2. A game in which I thought we got away from the run a bit. I know Dan Jones is going to be able to throw the ball on them, but I'd like to see Saquon Barkley get a little bit involved. We're going to be extra rested. Barkley didn't play this past week. Nobody on the defense played this past week. Jones didn't play this past week. We should be getting Adoree Jackson back. McKinney didn't play in that game. So there's reason for optimism going into this game. Make no mistake about it. Minnesota's probably going to come with a good game plan, and they got weapons on the offensive side. But let's rock and roll, baby. I give us a really good chance going up against Minnesota. But I want to dive into a couple of other things. We're going to start with what Boomer Esiason had to say regarding Daniel Jones, regarding the contract as the offseason approaches. And at least according to Boomer, his sources seem to think that this deal may even get done before the start of the playoffs. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I'll give my full opinion on all of it, though, after we pull up Boomer Esiason. Hopefully the volume works this time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to
would tell Daniel Jones that. And they probably have, I would say, they have the makings of a good solid foundation, assuming that I'm hearing also that Daniel Jones and the Giants are close to a contract extension. So for you Giant fans out there that are looking forward to that this offseason, I hear that they're close. The question is it 3 years or 4 years? What does the player want? What does the team want? Can they meet somewhere in the middle? I would tell Daniel Jones if they offer you a 4-year deal and you have a maximum guaranteed money significant, I would take that deal because, after 3 years, if you're as good as you think you are and you're as good as you've been in this offense and you're only going to get better and they're only going to get better support people around you, hopefully, then after 3 years, they'll go back to the negotiating table again because you're young enough. Sure. So, I think it's close. I wouldn't be surprised if something came, to fruition relatively soon. I don't know if it's a day or a week or 10 days, but I feel like they're close. And it'd be a nice thing for Daniel. It'd be a nice thing for the team to have that thing locked up and not have to worry about that position and then start worrying about everything else around the team where Joe Schoen thinks he can, fix it and make it right. So I feel that's close and hopefully that will come.
So there you have it. Let me just get this off the screen. So Boomer said a lot of things there. He said, according to his sources, and he's tight with Phil Simms. He's tight with people from within the New York Giants organization. Believe it if you don't, believe it or not. Maybe you're a fan that still doesn't want to believe that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And according to Esiason, he thinks it's going to be a 3 or 4 year deal. It's what I've said. I'm leaning more towards it's going to be of the 4-year variety. Regardless, I think it'll be a deal that the Giants could probably get out of after 2 years. Or like Boomer said, if Jones continues to progress when he gets more help around him, the Giants and Jones will rip up the contract and they'll give him an even healthier extension, which as a Giants fan, that should be exactly what you're hoping for. You don't want to have to go to the draft every year and worry about the quarterback position. That's the worst feeling in the world. I want Daniel Jones to continue to mature off this season and continue to grow, and hopefully he becomes the long-term answer. But it seems as if the New York Giants and Jones are already starting to negotiate, and hopefully they get this deal done. Do I think it'll happen before the playoffs? No. And it's not because I think the Giants at this point are still analyzing Jones. I think they've come to the conclusion that they want him back. I think Jones wants to be back with the New York Giants. I don't think that the Minnesota game is going to have any bearing on whether or not he's back with the team, but I think they don't want it to serve as much of as a distraction. I think they want to play the playoff game. They'll worry about the contracts after the fact. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll do it before the playoffs, but I think they're probably going to let the playoffs play out, and then they'll come to the final conclusion on what they could agree on in terms of a dollar amount. But it seems as if at least they're starting to negotiate. They're starting to come to what they parameters in terms of what they think the deal is going to be, and we'll worry about it after the playoffs. That's the way I look at it. But in the end, I think his market's going to be roughly $28 to $30, $32 million a year on average. That's just the way the market is. There's 15 quarterbacks in the NFL currently making over $25 million a year on average. That's the market for a starting quarterback, and the market goes up 10% every year. So I think you start around that $27, $28 million range in terms of per year average. So you're looking at about a 4-year, $120 million deal, a 3-year, $90 million deal. That's the market for Daniel Jones. That's approximately what I think he'll be receiving. If of course, we don't just franchise tag him, which I don't think is going to happen because there's clearly going to be a market for him. And I don't think the New York Giants are going to do the exclusive franchise tag where nobody could even talk to him, which I think is like $45 million a year, because then Jones would have a lot of leverage in the negotiations because he could just say, well, I'll gladly play on that. So I don't see that happening. I think they're going to try to get this done before free agency starts, which is the smart approach, because then Shane, like Boomer said, will have the ability to plan accordingly for guys like Saquon Barkley, for guys like Julian Love. But it sounds like this deal is going to get done very soon. And as a Giants fan, I'm happy. I think it's the proper approach for several of the reasons that I've said in the past. I think it's the right approach. I think the Giants right now are not in a place to trade up for a quarterback pick. They have a ton of holes on this roster. Jones has proven to be worthy of a guy that you want to see if he can continue to grow when he gets the necessary pieces around him. And I think next offseason, that is exactly what the mission is going to be for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, trying to shore up the other holes on this team around Daniel Jones to see if he could evolve even further than he's evolved this year. And he's done a tremendous job. I posted stats today on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at the red zone stats because we all know that Kafka's done a great job in terms of the red zone offense this year. The Giants have jumped from 32 last year in the league, dead last, 31 the year before that, to 7th. I think it's 7th. Might be 8th. I think it's 7th in overall red zone efficiency in terms of scoring touchdowns. Over 63% of the time we reached the red zone. Last year, it was 42% of the time. That is a huge jump. And when you look at Daniel Jones' individual red zone statistics, which is the hardest, place to operate in terms of the quarterback play on the field. The field is condensed, right? You don't get, it's much harder, right? You have the extra defender on the back end. Daniel Jones this year has a 64% completion percentage inside the 20. That is the third best mark in the NFL. Last year, he had a 38% completion percentage inside the 20. He also has 12 touchdowns this year inside the 20 and only 1 interception. That 1 interception came week 1, and that is not including his 7 rushing touchdowns. So he's done a tremendous job inside the 20 this year. The Giants offense has done a tremendous job inside the 20 next year. I think next year when you get more weapons, you try to get better from 20 to 20, something that we all know that this team needs to work on. But I'm excited to see Jones back. I'm excited to see what this team can evolve into 2023 after hopefully we have a long, lengthy playoff run when we started going up against the Minnesota Vikings. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is the schedule that came out. Now, the order didn't come out, but the teams and where the games are going to be played has come out based off of where the New York Giants finished in the standings. Now, of course, we know that the New York Giants are going to play all the divisional opponents, one home, one away. I don't need to go over that. The Cowboys, the Eagles, and Washington. Our non-divisional opponents, we play the NFC West and we play the AFC East, both of which look to be pretty hard divisions, at least on paper. But you can't judge a schedule just based off paper. Before I go over the schedule, I've seen a lot of people say, well, the New York Giants are going to fall back to the pack next year. They're playing a really hard schedule. Everybody said our schedule was going to be super easy this year. I don't think our schedule turned out to be as easy as people had predicted going into the year. I think the Eagles were better than some people may have expected. I think the Cowboys were better than some people expected. And I understand that they also played what were perceived to be softer schedules. But when you really look at it, the Jaguars, I think, were better than people thought they would be. The Lions were better than I think people thought they would be. The Seahawks were better than I think a lot of people thought they would be. And it goes both ways because the Packers weren't quite as good as a lot of people thought they would be. The Colts, the same thing. So it goes both ways. But there were certainly some teams on our schedule that were a little bit more challenging than I think you would have expected going into the year. And the same can be said in terms of less challenging than you thought they would be going into the beginning of the year. And you can't predict a schedule year to year, especially this early in the process. You don't know what these teams are going to look like. You don't know who the quarterback's going to be, where they're going to be drafting, so on and so forth. But we'll jump into the schedule. We'll talk about the teams they're going to be playing outside of the division. You've got the Rams. I think that's a perfect example of a team that you can't really predict for. That'll be at home. That's good. They got to travel across the country. Who knows what Matt Stafford's going to look like next year? He's been banged up this year. Kupp's been injured. Donald's been injured. They certainly have talent. They're a year removed from a Super Bowl, but they may very well not be the same team. They may be falling off the cliff. There's been rumors that McVay may be looking to move on at this point. We'll have to wait and see, but that's a team that's it's impossible to predict what they're going to look like going into next year. Same thing with the Seahawks. The Seahawks this year made the playoffs. Just as big of a surprise, in my opinion, as the New York Giants were getting the number 7 seed. But who's to say that a guy like Geno Smith, who was kind of a Cinderella story, I've said I think he should win Most Improved Player of the Year this year, coming out of nowhere. But who's to say he's going to be able to duplicate what he did this year? Seattle may draft a quarterback for all that we know, and they may want to start to integrate him into the offense at some point next season, depending on when we play them in the schedule. I think they're picking 3rd overall. So there's so many questions that need to be answered there. But again, it's good that it's at home at least. At the very least, we're not going to have to travel there, which is one of the hardest places to play in the NFL. Then you've got the New England Patriots. They're always tough. Belichick's a good coach regardless of the talent around them, but it's at home. The negative here is the Jets game is a home game. So not only do we have one extra road game, we have a home game that's kind of a neutral site game with the New York Jets. So as much of a benefit we got this past year with the schedule, right? Because when you think about the Green Bay Packers game, that was in London. That was a neutral field game, but that went as a road game for us. And we had the additional home game on top of it. It's the opposite this next year. We have 9 road games, and one of our 8 home games is a neutral field game, being that it's the New York Jets. Next time around in 4 years when we play the Jets, it'll be a home game for them. So that didn't work out for us in terms of the schedule. Jets, again, a team with talent, but who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be next year. They may go out and get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, or they may just start completely over and go with a guy in the draft. So, again, a very hard team to predict for. The Packers, I think Rodgers will be back. We'll see. He's due $50 million. Maybe they trade him and they make Jordan Love the starter. Again, a very hard team to predict for right now. And then on the road, you've got the Arizona Cardinals. If we get them early in the season, hopefully we do, you got to figure Kyler Murray won't be playing after the injury that he had. Who knows the timetable with that? 49ers are a really good team. Buffalo Bills, of course, a great team. Miami definitely has some talent, but that's a team that fell apart down the stretch. Who knows if Tua is even going to be the quarterback? He probably will be, but he's had tons of concussion issues. Of course, they got premier wide receivers on the outside. And then you got the Raiders. Who knows? Could be starting a rookie quarterback. Same thing with the New Orleans Saints. So it's very hard to predict. I don't look at the schedule and say to myself, oh, my God. We definitely have some challenging teams. The Buffalo Bills being a big part of that. The Eagles are going to be good. The Cowboys are going to be good. It's going to be probably on paper a relatively hard schedule. But I don't think it's a schedule I look at and say there's no way we could win 9 or 10 games next year. I don't look at it that at all. And I have Brian, and as long as Brian Daboll's our coach, I believe in this football team. I think we have one of the better coaches in the NFL, and I think he's going to have a good game plan week in and week out. The other thing that I really noticed when I looked at that schedule, there are a lot of very desirable travel locations. So I may be going to a road game or two this next year. I mean, you look at that, Arizona's a nice place to visit. San Francisco would be cool. Buffalo, of course, known for their tailgates, rowdy fans. You got Miami. Who doesn't want to go to Miami? Las Vegas with the Raiders, right? The New Orleans Saints. So certainly a lot of good, desirable road destinations, as opposed to this year when you have places like Jacksonville, not nearly as desirable as this upcoming year. So really looking forward to potentially going to a road game this year. That'd be really cool. I'm sure a lot of New York Giants fans are as well. But yeah, I look at that schedule. I say to myself, we got a shot. We're not playing the Chiefs. We're not playing the The Chargers. We're not playing anybody in the AFC West. We're not playing the Ravens. We're not playing the Bengals. We got some tough teams on there like the Bills. The Jets could be pretty good. We'll see with the AFC East and everything else. But yeah, I think we could stack up with a lot of teams on that schedule. Again, it'll probably come down to the division. I think that is where we're going to be measured next year in terms of further success. If we can compete with the Cowboys and the Eagles next year, is hopefully we continue to grow as a football team, but super excited for the playoffs. I know you guys are too. I'll be live all week, and hopefully the New York Giants get a W so we can talk about football for one more week. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.